Now we've got Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Thanks for joining again.
Hey, Brian, how's it going?
So I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but we've just had another committee hearing on the impeachable offenses of Joe Biden, led by James Comer. There's an election in less than 6 weeks that doesn't even include Joe Biden. What on God's green earth is James Comer trying to do here?
Well, finally, we've gotten to the meat and potatoes of the Biden impeachment investigation. And by that, I mean Comer has went on Newsmax, right, where he runs to, and has said to the Newsmax audience, which he had been basically lying to for a year and a half, and Fox News, but he went to the Newsmax audience and said, oh, by the way, my job was never to impeach. What? We had impeachment hearings. Okay, they took a vote on the floor to open up an impeachment inquiry. Okay, he released a 300-page book report, which was his dossier on impeachment. Okay, and oh, now my job wasn't to impeach. Is that what happens? Like when you're doing something but you fail at doing it, you go backwards and you're like, no, we were never doing that. No, we have it all wrong.
The goalposts just move once he realized he can't do it. Why wouldn't he just try and impeach Joe Biden initially if the whole purported point before he came on the Newsmax and moved the goalpost back, if the purported point was to get rid of Joe Biden?
Because he doesn't have the evidence. Because Joe Biden did nothing wrong. And he has Republican members who are like, we're not impeaching a president for nothing. There's actually a couple good Republicans who don't want to partake in this. So, James walked himself into a place that does not exist. And so, but that's why I'm going to continue to call him out, because I'm not going to let him change the topic. I'm not going to let him pretend he's bipartisan, which he tried to do in last hearing. I'm not going to let him just forget that he spent tens of millions of dollars and that he dealt with Russian disinformation and Chinese foreign agents, and that he was having people testify from prison. I'm not going to let the American people forget that he weaponized that committee. He hijacked that committee, and he didn't do oversight of the federal bureaucracy. He used it as a campaign committee. Oh, and he failed, by the way.
What has the point been of perpetuating a committee on how Biden should have been impeached if A, there is no evidence to impeach him for, and B, there's no votes to impeach him with? Like what are we doing here other than wasting taxpayer dollars?
Well, it's a committee about nothing, right? I mean, that's literally what the committee is. It could be a great sitcom, a committee about nothing. Okay. Yeah. And look, ultimately, I think Republicans saw previously when they did Benghazi, and when they did the whole the other email stuff, and they had hearings. I think they saw political dividends, and so the idea was, we're going to do this with Joe Biden. And two things happened here. One, they couldn't muster the evidence. They couldn't put on the same show. They had a chairman who didn't know what he was doing, who wasn't good at it, who was getting his ass handed to him every week, so it wasn't working out in the same way these other hearings did. That's number one. And number two is, Joe Biden's not running anymore. So like when that happened, I mean, that took the wind right out of their sails. They tried to pivot to Kamala or Tim Walz, like Tim Walz is some secret Chinese spy. Like, I'm sure when people look at Gwen Walz, all they see is, that's a Chinese spy.
Right.
It's just utter nonsense. But yeah, right now, oversight, 2 years in, millions of dollars, has nothing to show for the BS that Comer tried to sell the American people. And he, by the way, the other day in committee wanted to take credit. He's like, I don't know, Mr. Moskowitz, I'd love to be a fly on the wall when you find out that Joe Biden isn't running anymore. Are you sure you want to take credit for that, Comer? First of all, it was the debate that did that, number one. Number two is, but I don't know that Donald Trump is real happy that Biden isn't running anymore. I'm sure you want to take credit for that. I mean, if you do, we'll make sure Donald Trump knows you're the man solely responsible for being Kamala Harris.
Right. We'll parade Jim Jordan around as the person responsible on mid-November and see how Republicans like that. I do want to get to the Tim Walz of it all in just a moment, but first, I think it's worth noting here that this is the same Republican Party that came into the majority in the House on promises of tackling inflation and lowering gas prices, and to my knowledge, they've not advanced one single piece of legislation to actually do that. So what's the lesson here for voters as we head toward yet another election?
Actually, your knowledge is pretty good. They've accomplished none of that stuff. And in fact, they had more hearings on gas stoves than they did on Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And trying to learn the lessons there for the Gold Star families. What they did here is it started off in chaos when they couldn't elect a speaker. And from there, it spiraled downwards. They never were able to get back together. They impeached the cabinet secretary. That hadn't happened in 150 years. That really helped lower costs for the American people. They've held multiple people in contempt. That's really, getting the price of food down, or helping with gas prices. And then they did this, dishwasher safety bill, dishwasher price bill, save our dishwashers, or, help our gas stoves, or, don't lose the refrigerators. I mean, you literally, it's as if the Onion was running the policy. Coming out of my colleagues from across the aisle, because if the Onion wanted to write these bills, or the Babylon Bee wanted to write these bills, they would look exactly how they were written by my colleagues. Yeah. And so this is not just my opinion. It's why Congress has a 17% approval rating. It's why Republicans have said we did nothing this Congress. They know it. We know it. The American people know it. Just a total waste of time. They were also slow to help with foreign aid when we could have done that both for Israel and Ukraine. Super slow to do that. There really isn't a win that they could point to at all. They formed the COVID Select Committee. They did nothing with that. They formed the China Select Committee. They did nothing with that. No accomplishment.
They have the weaponization of government subcommittee, which really blew up in their faces when Joe Biden's own DOJ prosecuted Bob Menendez, Henry Cuellar, and the president's own son.
Yeah, and so just this whole thing has just not worked out for them. So what's the lesson learned here? The lesson learned is if you want to take Congress, and instead of legislating and doing good by the American people, you want to turn it into a political arm of a campaign for 2 years, it's not going to work.
Okay, so I had mentioned before I want to talk about Tim Walz and China, another hearing that occurred in which Republicans have decided to use their time well. Again, not to lower costs, not to add jobs, not to cool inflation, but to try and pin Tim Walz to the CCP. Can you speak on how that effort went by Republicans?
Well, I mean, they're failing downwards. I mean, literally, just like things have gone so poorly for them in oversight, and the chairman with all these fictitious, nonsense that they've done here. Tim Walz gets picked. He's a pretty obscure governor. He was served in Congress, had a lot of bipartisan relationships, and they're like, okay, well, the Biden thing didn't work out, so we got to pivot, right? Tim Walz, what's the evidence that we have on Tim Walz? Well, sir, we're told that he has been to a Panda Express and really likes the orange chicken. They're like, great, investigate that. I mean, that's the evidence they have. And the best part about it is like, well, he has said positive things about China in the past. Excuse me. Okay. Donald Trump was literally sending Xi Jinping love letters.
And he had a bank account open in China in the beginning of his presidency.
I love President Xi. He's strong. He's a great cuddler. Okay. He moisturizes his hands. Just like Donald Trump just doting on the guy. He runs that country great. We should run it like China. Maybe we should do the same thing. And they then, like, the hypocrisy of it, like, oh, let's talk about that Tim Walz visited China. Listen, there's nothing there. Zero, zilch, nada. It's why they actually abandoned the hearing that they had. They tried to pretend like it wasn't about Tim, right? And then they just they brought it up a little bit. The chairman again went on Newsmax and was like, oh, that Walz family, they're super scary. I mean, Maria Bartiromo choked on oxygen when he said that. Like, what are you talking about? They're super scary. They look like middle America, right? They look like normal people. The guy was a moderate in Congress.
The most famous picture of Tim Walz is him surrounded by school children when he was making sure that they had free school lunches.
Yeah, I mean, the audacity to feed people.
Yeah. Okay, so the newest update right now is that Congress looks like it will pass a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open.
Oh, who could have seen that coming, Brian? Who could have seen that coming?
What was the holdup from Republicans? Because it wasn't that easy. It's not like we just fell into a clean CR to keep the government open.
Same show, different episode, right? Like, let's go backwards for a second. Why isn't Kevin McCarthy Speaker anymore? Oh, I know why. He did a clean CR with the Democrats. Okay, well, let's create chaos and get rid of him. And then, Speaker Johnson comes in, and what does he do? Well, he's got to have a CR vote. He goes to his Republican colleagues, and they're like, we're not keeping the government open. So he puts a clean CR on the floor, and we do it with the Democrats, right? And we do exactly what got Speaker McCarthy removed. We do it again. Now, here we go. third time around. Third time's a charm, right? Here we go. Well, let's try to do it, with the SAVE Act. Let's try to really partisan up keeping the government open.
And real quick, talk about what the SAVE Act is. Sure.
The SAVE Act says that illegal immigrants would not be able to vote, which is already the law, not
which
by
is already
statute.
So let me ask you this. I want to play devil's advocate here, because
Sure.
the criticism from Republicans is, okay, well, if you're not opposed to it, then why don't you just pass it?
Okay, well, first of all, it's already in the Constitution, which is a higher document than statute. So let's start there. Okay. Number two is they didn't just do that. They then added in all sorts of other stuff that had nothing to do with the top issue, like giving individuals the ability to go sue, election supervisors who are going to tally votes, giving every American the ability to go sue, which, by the way, would not only increase litigation, but would actually keep us from ever getting a result. Everything would be in court. Okay. And so that's why they were literally trying to destroy how people get elected in this country. And that's one of the reasons why Democrats didn't go along with the other myriad of nonsense in there. But don't listen to us. They couldn't pass it with their own members. Republicans rejected this idea. They couldn't pass it. And not one or two, by the dozens, didn't vote for that CR. In fact, if you're watching, they had members voting for it, and then they saw that it was going to fail, and they were switching. Oh, well, if it's going to fail, we'll vote no. Okay.
Right. So they're not on record.
Hold on, we're not done, Brian. We're not done. And then you had Donald Trump coming out and saying, shut it down, shut the government down, right? Shut it down. So now members are like, oh, well, the mothership has beamed down the instructions.
Right.
Okay, so what do? So meanwhile, the CR fails on the floor. Very embarrassing. Usually doesn't happen, but things like that have happened here now in Congress that we've never seen before for the last 2 years. So guess what we do? Well, let's run the playbook again that Republicans have complained about, working with the Democrats to keep government open. We're going to be voting on it, this afternoon. It's going to pass on a bipartisan basis, probably with more Democrats. Republicans having to run to us to be the adults in the room. We did it on the debt ceiling. We did it on government shutdown. We did it on Ukraine. We'll continue to do that. But really embarrassing for the speaker.
And so what are the implications now for Mike Johnson? Because again, to your exact point, this is the precise reason that Kevin McCarthy was ousted as speaker. And so do Republicans just accept the fact that for the same reason that they got rid of Kevin McCarthy, that they're just going to have to
they can't wait to get out of here. They can't wait. They're going to do this vote. They're going to run to the camera. They're going to bitch, moan, and complain about what just happened. And then they're going to get on their flight and go home, and we're never going to hear about it again.
Right. Okay. So I want to switch gears here now to the upcoming debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. What are you looking out for with regard to that debate?
Well, I'm interested to see the setup. Do we know? Are they standing? Are they sitting at desks? Are they laying down on couches? I'm interested to see how they're setting it up. Do you know?
I believe couches are off the table for obvious reasons.
Got it. It must have been part of the negotiations.
Yeah.
So what am I expecting? Listen, I think JD is going to be good. He's not done himself any service since he's been picked. I think he's been dramatically underwhelming, not just for Democrats. I think Republicans have been shocked how poorly he's performed on the road. But I actually think he's going to do fine in this setting, in a debate setting. Okay. But at the same time, Tim Walz has shown that he is very good with communications.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a better communicator than I think people knew of him. And I don't know that JD is going to be prepared for that. Someone who can actually talk to the camera, talk to middle America, right? And be able to communicate the way that people can absorb and digest a message. And listen, when JD says something strange, which is very possible, I look for Tim Walz to look at him and go, man, you're really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good call. Let's hope for J.D. Vance's sake that there's no ordering of donuts involved in any of this. Finally, let's finish off with this. What were your thoughts on hearing that Donald Trump would decide not to debate Kamala Harris a second time?
I agree with that decision if I were him. I mean, if I'm Donald, I'm like, we're not doing that again. Yeah. I mean, so if I'm him, I'm like, yeah, no more debates with her. Okay. I mean, give me a break. But obviously, it's not good for the American people. If I'm Kamala Harris, I want to have a debate like every Tuesday between now and the election, right? Yeah. Because I think the one thing the vice president and this campaign understands is just let Donald be Donald. Expose it, show it, let him be Donald. Don't interrupt him from being himself.
Yeah, just let him talk.
Don't interrupt him from being himself. just like, give a mouse a cookie, and then like let it happen from there. Donald will do all the work you need, right? And I think that's really what we saw in the last debate. Literally, I have never seen a campaign come out and say, "Here's our strategy. Our strategy is to get under Donald Trump's skin. We are going to telegraph our strategy to the world." And the other campaign goes, "We know their strategy. They're going to try to get under Donald Trump's skin, and we're never going to allow it. We have a protective bubble around Donald and his skin." Okay.
Cut to.
And then
cut to.
Immigration, on his immigration, on his top issue, she goes, "And people are leaving your rallies." And boom, plan launched. Hold on. The defensive bubble shattered. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump, diarrhea of the mouth. They're eating the cats and the dogs and the pets of the people. Okay, and we're off to the races. And that was the end of the debate right there.
Well, to that point, then we'll end it on this, and that is you've graciously allowed for a new theme song, and this is your new theme song to play us out of the interview. So I think we're gonna play that right here.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.